The message came on a cold morning in December, 2387. Every screen on Earth showed the same thing. Every radio played the same words. Humanity was not alone in the universe. But the news was not good. Una was 32 years old when she became the first human to stand before alien beings. She was a diplomat, chosen for her calm voice and steady hands. But even she felt fear when she saw the council chamber for the first time. The room was made of crystal that glowed with soft light. 12 different species sat in a circle around her. Some had bodies made of pure energy. Others looked like insects the size of cars. A few seemed to exist in ways that hurt her eyes to look at. They had been watching Earth for hundreds of years. They knew everything about humanity, and they had made their choice. Your species is denied entry to the galactic community, the speaker said. It was a tall creature with silver skin and no face. Its voice came from everywhere at once. Humans are too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. Una tried to speak. She tried to explain that humans could change, that they could learn. But the speaker raised one long hand. The decision is final. You will be contained. 3 days later, the barrier appeared. The aliens called it the Val. It was a wall of energy that surrounded the entire solar system. Any ship that touched it would be destroyed in less than a second. Humanity was trapped. They were prisoners in their own home. Captain Taiho did not believe the warnings. He was 50 years old, a veteran of deep space missions. He had spent his whole life dreaming of the stars. He refused to accept that those dreams were over. Maybe they are lying, he told his crew. Maybe the barrier is not as strong as they say. His ship, the Horizon, was the fastest vessel Earth had ever built. Taiho pushed the engines to their limit. His crew watched in silence as the veil grew closer on their screens. It looked like a curtain of pale blue light, beautiful and deadly. "Sir," his navigator said. Her name was Bora, and her voice was shaking. "We should turn back." "No," Taiho said. "The galaxy needs to know that humans do not give up." The Horizon touched the veil at exactly 3:47 p.m. Earth time. The ship and everyone on it turned to ash in 0.003 seconds. There was no explosion, no fire, just silence and then nothing. Back on Earth, people watched the footage over and over. Some cried. Some screamed. Some simply sat in shock. But one woman did something different. Director Myray of the United Earth Space Command called an emergency meeting. She was 61 years old, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent her career preparing humanity for first contact. She had imagined many scenarios, but not this one. Never this one. The meeting was held in a bunker deep underground. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat around a long table. Their faces showed fear, anger, and despair. Myray stood at the front of the room and waited for silence. "They think we will destroy ourselves," she said. Her voice was quiet but strong. "They think we will fight over the scraps of our own solar system until nothing is left. They think we will fade away and be forgotten." She paused and looked at each face in turn. "They are wrong." A man from one of the smaller nations raised his hand. "What can we do? The barrier is impossible to break. Our best ship was destroyed in seconds." "We do not try to break it," Myray said. "We go around it." Confused whispers filled the room. The barrier surrounded everything. There was no way around it. But Myray held up a folder full of papers. 20 years ago, a team of scientists discovered something strange about space itself. They found that reality has more than 3 dimensions. Most of us cannot see these extra dimensions, but they exist. And more importantly, they can be used. She opened the folder and spread the papers on the table. They showed complex equations and diagrams that most people in the room could not understand. If we can learn to fold space through these hidden dimensions, we can jump past the barrier. We can reach the stars without ever touching the veil. The room was silent for a long moment. Then someone laughed. It was a bitter, hopeless sound. "That is science fiction," the man said. "It would take centuries to develop such technology." Myre smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had already made a difficult choice. "Then we had better start now." That night, Project Horizon's Edge was born. It was named after Taiho and his lost crew. Thousands of scientists from around the world were recruited. They were told to leave their families, their homes, their old lives behind. They would work in secret, underground, for as long as it took. Above ground, life went on. People worked and ate and raised children. They tried to forget about the veil that surrounded them. Some even convinced themselves that it was better this way, safer. But below the surface of the moon, in caverns that stretched for miles, humanity was quietly preparing its revenge. Not a revenge of violence, not a revenge of war. Something better. Something the galaxy would never expect. They were going to prove the Council wrong. They were going to reach the stars. And nothing, not even a prison made of light, was going to stop them. 50 years passed in silence. The Galactic Council watched Earth through their long-range sensors. They saw human ships stop flying toward the veil. They saw the number of broadcasts decrease year after year. They saw the population stop growing. And they were pleased. "The human problem is solving itself," the speaker told the council during their annual meeting. "They are learning to accept their place. In another few generations, they will forget they ever dreamed of the stars." The 12 species congratulated themselves on their wisdom. They had contained a dangerous race without firing a single weapon. It was, they believed, a perfect solution. They could not have been more wrong. Deep beneath the surface of the moon, in caverns carved out of solid rock, Chief Engineer Jisoo was celebrating a birthday. She was 73 years old. Her hair had turned completely white, and her hands were not as steady as they once were. But her mind was sharper than ever. 30 years, she said to the crowd of scientists gathered around her. 30 years we have worked on this project. 30 years of failures and setbacks and near misses. But today, my friends, we are ready. She pointed to a small ship sitting in the middle of the cavern. It did not look impressive. It was about the size of a bus, with no weapons and only a simple engine. But inside that ship was the most advanced technology humanity had ever created. "The fold drive," Jisoo said. "It will bend space itself. It will let us step through the cracks in reality. It will take us past the veil without ever touching it." A young man raised his hand. His name was Do-hun, and he was Jisoo's grandson. He was 26 years old, with the same sharp eyes as his grandmother. "How many test pilots have we lost?" he asked. The room went quiet. Jisoo looked at her grandson with a mix of pride and sadness. 11, she said softly. 11 brave men and women who gave their lives so we could learn from our mistakes. Do-hun nodded slowly. "Then I should be the 12th. "No," Jisoo said quickly. "You are too important. You are the future of this project." "That is exactly why it should be me," Do-hun said. He walked toward the ship. "If I die, you will know that technology still has problems. If I live, you will know it is ready. Either way, humanity wins." Jisoo wanted to argue. She wanted to order him to stay. But she knew her grandson better than anyone. He had inherited more than just her intelligence. He had inherited her stubbornness too. "Be careful," she whispered as he climbed into the cockpit. Do-hun smiled at her through the window. "I will see you on the other side, grandmother." The countdown began. Everyone in the cavern held their breath. The ship's engines hummed with a strange, low sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. And then, in a flash of light that left spots in everyone's eyes, the ship vanished. For 3 terrible seconds, there was only silence. The screens showed nothing. The sensors detected nothing. It was as if Doheen had never existed at all. Then the communication system crackled to life. "This is Lieutenant Do-yoon of the Earth vessel Fold 1. His voice was shaking with excitement. "I am 40 light years from Earth. I am past the veil. Grandmother, are you there? We did it. We actually did it." Jisoo fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Around her, scientists were cheering and hugging each other. 30 years of work had finally paid off. But Jisoo knew this was only the beginning. Over the next 10 years, everything changed. The first colonists were sent through Fold space in secret. They landed on a planet in a star system the Council had never claimed. It was a harsh world, with thin air and cold winters. But it had water and soil and everything humans needed to survive. They called it Dawn. The colony grew slowly at first. A few hundred people, living in prefab shelters, growing food in underground farms. But word spread quietly through Earth's population. People who had lost hope found a new purpose. Scientists, engineers, farmers, teachers, all volunteered to leave everything behind for a chance to be free. By the end of the decade, Dawn had 50,000 people. By the end of the second decade, it had 500,000. And it was no longer the only colony. The Council had claimed the best systems in the galaxy, the ones with rich resources and comfortable climates. But there were thousands of systems they had ignored. Systems that were too cold, too far from major trade routes. Systems that seemed worthless. Humans did not think they were worthless. Humans saw opportunity. 73 worlds. That was how many humanity had colonized in just 30 years. 73 new homes, scattered across the forgotten corners of the galaxy. Each one was built in secret. Each one was prepared for the day when the Council would finally discover them. Because everyone knew that day would come. Admiral Hyunsu was 102 years old when he was appointed commander of the Colonial Defense Fleet. He was born on Earth in the years just after the Exile. He had grown up hearing stories of the stars that were stolen from his people, and he had spent his entire life preparing to take them back. "We are not building an army of conquest," he told his officers during their first meeting. "We are building an army of survival. When the Council finds us, they will come to destroy us. Our job is to make sure they fail." The fleet grew year after year. Ships were built in hidden shipyards, using resources mined from asteroids and moons. Technology advanced faster than anyone had expected. The Council species had not invented anything new in 10,000 years. They had grown comfortable and lazy. But humanity was hungry. Humanity was desperate. And desperation, it turned out, was the greatest motivator of all. Dr. Soman made the breakthrough that changed everything. She was a weapons researcher at the Prometheus Institute, a brilliant woman with a mind that saw patterns no one else could see. She studied captured Council technology for years, looking for weaknesses. "Their shields are elegant," she reported to the Colonial Congress. "But they are also predictable. They operate on fixed frequencies that never change. If we build weapons that can adapt, that can cycle through thousands of frequencies per second, we can cut through their defenses like they are not even there." The first test was conducted on a small asteroid. A single shot from the new weapon punched through a Council-grade shield and vaporized the rock behind it. Humanity was ready. Now, they just had to wait. Governor Yoonji stood on the balcony of her office and watched the sun rise over New Seoul. It was the largest city on Dawn, home to 300,000 people. 50 years ago, this place had been an empty plain of frozen dirt. Now it had schools, hospitals, factories, and parks where children played under an alien sky. She was 64 years old, one of the first generation born outside the solar system. She had never seen Earth. She had never felt its gravity or breathed its air. But she carried its memory in her heart, passed down from parents and grandparents who still dreamed of home. Her assistant, a young man named Junho, appeared at the door. His face was pale. "Governor, we have a problem." The problem was a ship. A council ship. It had appeared at the edge of the Dawn system 3 hours ago, its sensors scanning everything in sight. It was a trade vessel from a species called the Kethrani, one of the 12 council races, and it was sending out a distress signal. "Pirates?" Junho explained as they rushed to the command center. A group of raiders attacked them near the border. They jumped to fold space without checking their destination. Now they are here, and their engines are damaged. Yoonji felt her stomach drop. For 80 years, humanity had remained hidden. 80 years of building and growing and preparing. And now, because of one unlucky accident, everything could fall apart. "Have they seen us?" she asked. "Yes, they have detected our satellites and our ships. They know this system is inhabited." The command center was chaos. Officers shouted at each other. Screens flashed with data. In the middle of it all, Admiral Hyun-soo sat calmly in his chair, studying the situation. "We have 2 options," he said when Yoonji arrived. "We can destroy them before they can report back to the council. Or we can help them and hope for the best." Yoonji looked at the image on the main screen. The Kethrani vessel was small, barely bigger than a shuttle. Through the viewport, she could see the crew moving around inside. They looked terrified. "How many people on board?" 12, including 3 children. Yoonji closed her eyes. She thought about everything humanity had built. The 73 colonies, the 4,000 warships, the billions of people who depended on her to keep them safe. One decision could risk it all. But she also thought about something else. She thought about the kind of people humans wanted to be. The council had exiled them because they believed humans were dangerous and cruel. Was she going to prove them right? "Help them," she said. The rescue operation was led by Captain Minho of the HSS Defiance. He was 38 years old, a decorated officer with a reputation for calm under pressure. But even he felt nervous as his ship approached the alien vessel. "This is Captain Minho of the human spaceship Defiance," he said into his communicator. "We are responding to your distress signal. Do not be afraid. We mean you no harm." The Kethrani captain was a creature that looked like a mix between a spider and a crystal. Its many eyes blinked in confusion as Minho's face appeared on its screen. "Human?" it said. "But humans are confined to their solar system." "The veil is still there," Minho said with a small smile. "We just found another way." The rescue took 6 hours. Human engineers repaired the Kethrani ship. Human doctors treated their wounded. Human cooks prepared food that the aliens could eat. And through it all, the Kethrani watched with growing amazement. "Why are you helping us?" Their captain asked Minho when the repairs were complete. "Your species owes us nothing. The council imprisoned you." Minho thought about the question carefully. He thought about his grandmother, who had been born on Earth before the exile. She had told him stories about a time when humans fought each other, when wars and hatred seemed endless. But she had also told him that humans were capable of change, that they could learn to be better. "We remember what you did to us," he said finally. "We will never forget. But we are not going to become like you. We will not punish innocent people for the decisions of their leaders." He handed the captain a small data chip. "When you return to council space, give this to your government. It contains a message from our people. We are here. We are not going away, and we would prefer to be friends than enemies. The Kethrani ship left Dawn 3 days later. Its crew looked back at the human planet with emotions they could not name. They had come expecting death. They had found kindness instead. The message reached the Galactic Council in exactly 1 week. The emergency session was called within minutes. "Impossible," the speaker said, its form flickering with what might have been fear. "The veil is perfect. Nothing can pass through it." They did not pass through, the Kethrani delegate said. They went around. They have developed technology that folds space itself, and they have been using it for decades. The chamber erupted in chaos. Species that had not agreed on anything in thousands of years suddenly found common ground. They were all terrified. "How many colonies do they have?" Someone demanded. "Unknown. Possibly dozens. Possibly hundreds. How large is their fleet?" "Unknown. But if their weapons technology has advanced as much as their propulsion..." The sentence did not need to be finished. Everyone understood what it meant. The speaker raised its hands for silence. When the room finally quieted, its voice was cold and hard. "We made a mistake 80 years ago. We tried to contain humanity, and we failed. We will not make the same mistake again. This time, we will not contain them." It paused, and its words echoed through the chamber like a death sentence. "This time, we will destroy them." The order went out to every council world. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon was to be gathered for a single purpose. They would find every human colony and burn it to ash. They would hunt down every human ship and tear it apart. They would not stop until humanity was nothing but a memory, a cautionary tale for future species who dared to defy the Council's will. 800,000 ships began to move through the galaxy, the largest fleet ever assembled in recorded history. Humanity had wanted to be left alone. The Council had other plans. And so, after 80 years of silence, the war finally began. Admiral Seojin received the news on a Tuesday morning. She was eating breakfast in her quarters aboard the flagship HSS Eternal Hope when her executive officer appeared at the door. His face told her everything she needed to know. "How long?" she asked. "The Council fleet will reach Dawn in 18 hours. Seojin set down her chopsticks and took a deep breath. She was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too much. She had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. She had always known it would come. But now that it was here, she felt strangely calm. "How many ships do they have?" "Our scouts report approximately 800,000 vessels. Mostly cruisers and destroyers, but there are also several hundred capital ships." 800,000. Seojin almost laughed. The entire colonial defense fleet numbered just over 4,000 ships. They were outnumbered 200 to 1. "And how many ships can we gather at dawn in time?" 1,200, Admiral. "Maybe 1,300 if we push the engines hard." Seojin stood and walked to her window. Outside, she could see the lights of Dawn cities glittering on the night side of the planet. 500,000 people lived down there. Families, children, people who had built new lives in a place the galaxy had forgotten. Then 1,200 ships will have to be enough. The Council fleet emerged from fold space in perfect formation. It was a sight that would have terrified any other species in the galaxy. Row after row of warships, their weapons charged and ready, their shields glowing with power. At the front of the formation was the Council flagship, a vessel so large it had its own gravity. The fleet commander was a being of pure energy named Vor. It had lived for 10,000 years and commanded armies in 100 wars. It had never lost a battle. It did not expect to lose this one. "Human fleet detected," one of its officers reported. Approximately 1,200 vessels forming a defensive line around the planet. Vor would have smiled if it had a mouth. 1,200 ships against 800,000. The humans were either very brave or very stupid. Perhaps both. "Signal all ships," Vor commanded. "Advance and destroy. Leave nothing alive." The Council fleet surged forward. On the human side, Admiral Seojin watched them come. Her officers were tense, their hands gripping their consoles. She could feel the fear in the air. But she could also feel something else. Something stronger. "All ships," she said calmly into her communicator. "This is Admiral Seojin. I know you are afraid. I am afraid too. But I want you to remember something. Remember why we are here. Remember what we are fighting for." She paused, watching the enemy fleet grow larger on her screen. 80 years ago, the galaxy tried to bury us. They locked us in a cage and waited for us to die. But we did not die. We built new homes in the darkness. We created new technology from nothing. We raised children who have never known the prison that was supposed to be their grave. Her voice grew stronger. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity. Today, we fight not for conquest, not for revenge, but for the right to exist. And we will not lose. She raised her hand. "All ships engage." The Battle of Dawn was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Council ships outnumbered the humans 600 to 1. Their combined firepower could crack planets. Their shields had protected them for thousands of years. But none of that mattered when human weapons began to fire. Dr. Summon's adaptive weapons worked exactly as designed. Each shot analyzed the enemy shield frequency in microseconds, then adjusted to slip through the gaps. Council ships that had never taken damage suddenly exploded in balls of flame. Captains who had never known fear began to panic. But it was not just the weapons. It was the pilots. Human ships were smaller and faster than Council vessels. They darted through the enemy formation like fish through water, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. Their pilots had trained for years in simulations based on exactly this scenario. They knew the Council tactics. They knew the weaknesses. And they exploited every single one. Captain Yuna, named after the ambassador who had first faced the Council decades ago, led a squadron of 50 fighters into the heart of the enemy fleet. Her ship was barely bigger than a shuttle, armed with only 2 small weapons. But in her hands, it was deadly. "Squadron 7, follow my lead," she commanded. "Target the flagship's engine section." "Captain, that is suicide," her wingman protested. "The flagship has more guns than our entire fleet." Yuna smiled. "Then we had better be fast." They dove through a storm of enemy fire, weaving between explosions and debris. 3 of her pilots were killed in the first minute, 5 more in the second. But the survivors kept going, their weapons blazing, until they reached the flagship's vulnerable engines. One shot. That was all it took. The adaptive weapon found the exact frequency needed to penetrate the shield, and the flagship's main engine exploded in a ball of white fire. The Council fleet froze. For 5,000 years, no enemy had ever damaged a Council flagship. The psychological impact was devastating. Ships began to break formation. Commanders began to argue over what to do. And the humans did not give them time to decide. Admiral Seojin pressed the attack. Her ships pushed deeper into the enemy formation, targeting command vessels and communication relays. Every time a Council ship adjusted its shields, human weapons adapted faster. Every time a Council captain thought they were safe, a human fighter appeared out of nowhere and proved them wrong. The battle lasted 18 hours. By the end, the space around Dawn was filled with wreckage. 400,000 Council ships had been destroyed or disabled. The survivors fled in chaos, their formation broken, their pride shattered. Human losses were 200 ships. 200 out of 1,200. Impossible odds, and they had won. But Admiral Seojin did not celebrate. She stood on her bridge, looking at the carnage on her screen, and she felt only sadness. So many dead. So many lives lost on both sides. All because a group of aliens had been too afraid of something different. "Admiral," her communications officer said, "we are receiving a message from the Council flagship." Seojin raised an eyebrow. "They survived?" "Barely. Their commander wishes to speak with you." On the screen, the energy being called Vor flickered weakly. It had been injured in the battle, its form unstable and fading. But it still managed to project an image of itself to the human flagship. "I have lived 10,000 years, Vor said. "I have fought 100 wars. I have never been defeated. Until today." Seojin said nothing. She simply waited. "The Council underestimated you," Vor continued. "We saw your species as primitive, dangerous, unworthy of the stars. We were wrong." "Yes," Seojin said quietly. "You were. This war is not over. The Council will send more ships, more weapons. They will not stop until you are destroyed. Then we will keep fighting. For as long as it takes." Vor was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was different, softer, almost respectful. "I hope, for the sake of the galaxy, that you win." The transmission ended, and Admiral Seojin finally allowed herself to smile. The war had just begun, but humanity had sent a message that echoed across the stars. "We are here. We are strong. And we are not going anywhere." The war lasted 3 years. It was not the kind of war the Council expected. They had planned for a quick victory, a simple cleanup of a troublesome species. Instead, they found themselves fighting on 100 different fronts, against an enemy that seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. Human ships used full technology to strike deep into Council territory, then disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. They targeted supply lines, communication relays, and fuel depots. They never attacked civilian populations. They never killed unless they had to. But they made sure the Council felt every single blow. President GA watched the war from her office on dawn. She was 57 years old, elected just 2 years before the conflict began. She had promised her people peace and prosperity. Instead, she had led them into the greatest war in human history. "Our forces have taken the 7th sector," General Woojin reported during their daily briefing. "The Council has lost control of 12 more systems. At this rate, we could reach their capital within 6 months." GA nodded slowly. She should have felt happy. They were winning. Against all odds, against an enemy that outnumbered them thousands to 1, they were winning. But all she felt was tired. "How many did we lose?" she asked. Woojin hesitated. "In the 7th sector? About 800 ships. 15,000 soldiers. 15,000. GA closed her eyes. 15,000 families who would never see their loved ones again. 15,000 empty seats at dinner tables. 15,000 stories that would never be finished. And the Council? Approximately 200,000 dead. Their morale is collapsing. Our intelligence reports say many species are talking about surrender. 200,000. Even more families destroyed. Even more grief spreading across the galaxy. And for what? Because some aliens had been afraid of a species they did not understand. "General," GA said slowly, "what happens if we win?" Woojin blinked. "Ma'am? If we crush the Council completely. If we burn their worlds and break their governments. What then? We become the new rulers of the galaxy? We enforce our will on species that will hate us forever." The general was silent for a long moment. He had been a soldier his entire life. He knew how to fight wars. He had never really thought about what came after. "Then what do you suggest?" he asked. GA stood and walked to her window. Outside, she could see the memorial for the Battle of Dawn, a simple stone pillar with the names of everyone who had died defending their home. There were too many names. "I suggest we give them a choice." The message went out to every council world. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language. President GA spoke directly to the beings who had tried to destroy her people. "This war was not our choice," she said. 83 years ago, we reached out to the galaxy in friendship. You responded with fear and hatred. You trapped us in a prison and hoped we would die." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We did not die. We grew stronger. We built an empire in the shadows, and now that empire stands ready to challenge your power. We have weapons you cannot defend against. We have technology you cannot match. We could crush you if we wanted to." Another pause. "But we do not want to." Around the galaxy, billions of beings watched in confusion. This was not how wars ended. Victors did not offer mercy. They demanded surrender and took what they wanted. "We are offering you peace," Jihei continued. "Real peace, based on equality and respect. We do not want to rule you. We do not want revenge. We want what we wanted from the beginning, the chance to be part of something greater. The chance to explore the stars alongside you, not against you." She held up a document. "This is a proposal for a new galactic government. Not a council where some species have power and others have none. A true assembly where every voice matters. Where decisions are made together. Where no one is ever exiled simply for being different." She set the document down. "You have 1 week to decide. If you choose war, we will keep fighting. We will win eventually, but many more will die on both sides. If you choose peace, we can build something better. Something that will last for 1,000 generations." Her eyes were steady, her voice calm. "The choice is yours." The week that followed was the longest of Jihei's life. She barely slept. Every hour brought new reports. Some council species wanted to keep fighting. Others wanted to surrender. A few had already begun evacuating their worlds, convinced that humanity would destroy them no matter what they chose. On the 7th day, the answer finally came. The Treaty of Equal Stars was signed on a space station built specifically for the occasion. It orbited a dead star in neutral space, far from any homeworld. Representatives from all 12 council species attended. So did delegates from every human colony. Elder Hannah was chosen to sign for humanity. She was 107 years old, one of the last survivors of the generation that had lived through the exile. She had been a young woman when the veil was raised. She had spent her entire life waiting for this moment. Her hands trembled as she picked up the stylus. Not from age, from emotion. "I remember the day the council condemned us," she said, her voice carried by speakers to every corner of the chamber. "I was 24 years old. I watched as the barrier went up and trapped us in our own solar system. I heard the alien voices declaring that we were too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable to be trusted with the stars." She looked around the room at the alien faces watching her. "You were not entirely wrong. Humans have done terrible things to each other throughout our history. We have waged wars, committed atrocities, caused suffering beyond measure. But we have also done beautiful things. We have created art and music that moves the soul. We have shown compassion to strangers and sacrificed ourselves for those we love. We have looked up at the night sky and dreamed of reaching the light." She signed her name in flowing script. "You tried to bury us in darkness. You thought the darkness would break us. But you forgot something important." She looked up, her old eyes shining with tears and pride. Humans have always found our way by the stars. 500 years later, the museum on Dawn was quiet. It was a slow day, with only a few visitors wandering through the exhibits. Display cases held artifacts from the founding days. Old weapons, worn uniforms, faded photographs of people who had built an empire from nothing. A young alien stood before the central exhibit. She was Kethrani, the same species that had stumbled into human space centuries ago. Her many eyes studied the objects with curiosity. "I do not understand," she said to her guide, a young human man named Yemen. "Your people had every reason to hate us. We tried to destroy you. Why did you show mercy?" Yemen smiled. It was a question he had heard many times before, and he always gave the same answer. "Because hatred is easy," he said. "It is the simplest thing in the universe. You hurt me, so I hurt you. On and on forever, until everyone is broken." He gestured toward the window. Outside, ships of a dozen different species passed peacefully through the sky. Traders, explorers, families on vacation. Living proof that the impossible could become real. But building something better is hard. It takes patience and courage and the willingness to forgive. Our ancestors understood that. They knew that true strength is not about destroying your enemies. It is about turning them into friends. The Kethrani was silent for a long moment. Then she made a sound that Yemen had learned to recognize as laughter. "You humans are very strange," she said. Yemen grinned. "We know. That is what makes us fun." They walked out of the museum together, into a galaxy that had once tried to bury humanity, and had learned, to its great surprise, that humans do not stay buried. They rise, they reach, they claim the stars, and they do it together. The end.